Have you ever wondered why it seems like some people live in a different time than you? Maybe you've noticed it at a family gathering, where your cousin discusses concepts of personal development and neuroscience, while your aunt still insists on asking when she's getting married. Or maybe you notice it at work, where some colleagues move fluidly between different identities and roles, while others seem trapped in mental models from a bygone era. This feeling of temporal mismatch isn't just a subjective illusion or a simple generational conflict. We are witnessing something much deeper and more meaningful. For the first time in human history, we are observing an evolutionary divergence taking place not over millennia, but within a single human lifetime. And the most fascinating part is that certain groups, particularly some women, appear to be at the forefront of this evolutionary acceleration, creating a new kind of societal divide that doesn't follow traditional lines of class, race, or nationality. Today, we'll explore why this is happening, what it means for the future of our species, and how we can all navigate this new world where different humans are effectively living in different evolutionary eras simultaneously. To understand this phenomenon, we must first recognize that human evolution didn't stop when we climbed down from the trees or when we built the first cities. The idea that human evolution slowed down or stopped with the rise of modern civilization is a common misconception. In fact, biological evolution continues, but what has accelerated dramatically is our cultural and cognitive evolution. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived in a world where change occurred so slowly that a person could be born, live, and die without witnessing any significant transformation in their environment or the tools they used. A Paleolithic hunter used essentially the same kind of spear as his great-great-grandfather. A medieval peasant farmed the land with techniques nearly identical to those used by generations before. But today, an 80-year-old woman was born into a world without the internet, personal computers, birth control pills, or genetic engineering, and now lives in a reality where these elements not only exist, but are foundational to society's structure. This acceleration of technological and social change has created an entirely new environment for human evolution. We're no longer talking only about Darwinian natural selection acting on our genes over countless generations. We're witnessing a much faster kind of evolution, one driven by cultural adaptability, cognitive flexibility, and the development of new mental frameworks. And this is where we begin to see significant divergence in the speed at which different human groups are evolving. Let's examine why some women appear to be at the forefront of this evolutionary acceleration. For most of recorded history, women were systematically excluded from formal structures of power, knowledge, and decision-making. They lived in societies where their life choices were drastically limited. Their bodies were controlled by others, and their minds were deemed unfit for certain intellectual pursuits. This systemic restriction represented a specific kind of evolutionary pressure. When a person or group faces significant obstacles to survival and prosperity, it can stimulate the development of extraordinary adaptive capacities. Imagine being a woman just 100 years ago. To successfully navigate your social world, you needed to develop sophisticated skills in emotional intelligence, reading unspoken intentions, adapting to rapidly changing circumstances, and negotiating within systems where you had little formal power. you needed a deep understanding of human psychology and strategies to influence decisions without appearing to challenge authority. You had to manage complex relationships while maintaining your mental integrity under constant pressure to conform. These are precisely the adaptive skills that have become crucial in the 21st century. When formal barriers began to fall in recent decades, many women already possessed a well-developed set of abilities that proved invaluable for navigating the complexity of the modern world. Cognitive flexibility, social intelligence, and the capacity to operate simultaneously on multiple levels of reality, skills many women honed as survival mechanisms, have become decisive advantages in an era of rapid technological and social transformation. It's not that women are inherently more evolved, but rather that many have developed, due to specific historical circumstances, exactly the abilities that now define the cutting edge of human evolution. However, it would be inaccurate to speak of women as a homogeneous group. What we're really observing is that some women, particularly those with access to certain forms of education, resources, and exposure to diverse ideas, are evolving at a remarkably accelerated pace. This process isn't determined by gender itself, but by a complex interaction between biological, cultural, socioeconomic, and educational factors. Across the world, we see groups of women redefining what it means to be human in the 21st century, challenging categories and limits that seemed immutable for millennia. We can observe this phenomenon in multiple domains. In the professional sphere, many women are developing new models of leadership that blend traits traditionally seen as masculine, such as assertiveness and results orientation, with those traditionally associated with the feminine, like empathy and collaboration. They're not merely adopting existing models of success and power, they're creating entirely new paradigms. In personal relationships, many women are redefining love, commitment, and intimacy, creating new family and relational structures that reflect a more nuanced understanding of human nature and emotional needs. In spirituality and personal development, we see women integrating ancient traditions with modern scientific discoveries, crafting innovative approaches to existential questions that have haunted humankind since the dawn of consciousness. This evolutionary acceleration isn't just about adopting new technologies or ideas, it's a fundamental transformation in how some people experience and interpret reality. It's as if we're witnessing the emergence of a new operating system of human consciousness, a significant upgrade to the mental software we use to navigate the world. And some women appear to be leading this process. Of course, this accelerated evolution isn't limited to women. Men and non-binary individuals are also undergoing profound transformations in their awareness and abilities. The point isn't to create a new gender hierarchy, but to recognize emerging patterns in how different groups are responding to the unique evolutionary pressures of our time. One fascinating aspect of this phenomenon is how technology amplifies these evolutionary divergences. The internet and social media allow like-minded individuals to find one another and form communities regardless of geography. This means someone at the forefront of this accelerated evolution can connect with others who share their perspective and create social ecosystems that further reinforce and accelerate their growth. At the same time, these same technologies can allow others to isolate themselves in bubbles that reinforce more limited or traditional worldviews. This has led to an unprecedented situation where people living in the same society, working in the same offices, and even sharing the same dinner tables may be operating from fundamentally different levels of consciousness. It's as if some humans are already living in 2050, while others are still mentally anchored in 1950. This divergence creates tensions and conflicts that can't easily be resolved through traditional mechanisms of social negotiation, because the people involved are literally perceiving different realities. Technology isn't just facilitating this divergence, it's also creating new evolutionary pressures that accelerate it. Consider how artificial intelligence is transforming our cognitive environment. As machines become better at tasks once thought to be uniquely human, we are forced to redefine what makes us human. This pressure is driving rapid evolution in our self-understanding and the capacities we cultivate. Those who manage to adapt to this new environment, developing a symbiotic relationship with technology rather than resisting or being dominated by it, are evolving at a faster pace. And many women appear particularly adept at this kind of symbiotic adaptation. In part, this may be because the qualities now proving most valuable, such as social intelligence, systemic thinking, and the ability to integrate diverse perspectives, are precisely those many women have long cultivated as adaptive strategies within patriarchal systems. Another crucial factor in this accelerated evolution is the shift in how we understand knowledge and truth. We're moving from a paradigm where knowledge was seen as fixed, hierarchical, and controlled by established authorities, to one where it's seen as fluid, contextual, and co-created. This new epistemological model requires different cognitive abilities: tolerance for ambiguity, non-binary thinking, and the capacity to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. Again, these are precisely the abilities many women developed out of necessity while navigating social systems that often presented contradictions between rhetoric and reality. But it is important to recognize that this accelerated evolution comes with significant costs. Those at the forefront of this transformation often report feelings of alienation, misunderstanding, and isolation. Imagine what it must be like to perceive aspects of reality that others around you simply cannot see, or to operate from a structure of consciousness that makes it impossible to communicate effectively with those still trapped in previous paradigms. This experience of cognitive and perceptual misalignment can be profoundly lonely. I need to pause for a moment and ask you directly, which aspect of this accelerated evolution most awakens your curiosity or concern? Have you ever felt this mismatch in your own life, where it seems like you are operating from a reality framework different from those around you? I know that many times we keep these perceptions to ourselves, perhaps for fear of seeming arrogant or disconnected in a world that values belonging and conformity. But your observations are valid and most likely shared by more people than you imagine. Share in the comments. I notice this evolutionary divergence when your voice can help create a space where we can honestly discuss these collective experiences instead of suppressing them. And perhaps by naming these phenomena together, we can begin to imagine ways to navigate this new territory with greater wisdom and compassion. Another significant challenge is that this evolutionary divergence is creating new forms of inequality that do not fit neatly into our traditional categories of privilege and oppression. We are not talking only about material inequalities or access to resources, but about inequalities in the very capacity to understand and navigate the complexity of the contemporary world. Some people are developing mental structures that allow them to thrive in environments of uncertainty, rapid change, and information overload, while others feel increasingly overwhelmed, disoriented, and alienated. This new form of cognitive inequality raises profound ethical questions. Do we have the responsibility to help those who are struggling to adapt? How can we create societies that accommodate people operating from different structures of consciousness? Is it ethical or desirable to try to accelerate the evolution of those who seem to be falling behind? These are not abstract or academic questions. They are practical dilemmas that many of us face in our families, workplaces, and communities. A tempting response to these questions would be to simply celebrate those at the forefront of evolution and disregard those who seem to resist change. But this approach ignores an important truth. Different structures of consciousness and ways of cognition offer different gifts and insights. Those who maintain more traditional ways of being human preserve wisdoms and abilities that may be vital for our collective survival. Cognitive diversity, like biodiversity, makes the whole system more resilient. Furthermore, the fact that some women are evolving faster does not mean that all directions of this evolution are equally beneficial or sustainable. Evolution is not synonymous with linear progress or unequivocal improvement. It is a process of adaptation to specific environmental pressures, and some adaptations that seem advantageous in the short term may prove problematic in the long run. For example, consider how some people are adapting to the digital environment by developing extraordinary multitasking abilities and rapid information processing. These adaptations may be advantageous in certain contexts, but can also come with significant costs to depth of thought, creativity, and authentic human connection. Similarly, the ability to navigate multiple identities and social contexts can bring flexibility and resilience, but can also lead to feelings of fragmentation and loss of internal coherence. So what does this mean for the future? Are we witnessing the beginning of an evolutionary divergence that will eventually lead to distinct human species, as some futurists speculate? Or are we simply observing a temporary phase of misalignment that will eventually be resolved as more people reach these new structures of consciousness? It is impossible to predict with certainty, but we can identify some possible trajectories. One scenario is that this divergence continues to widen, effectively creating different types of humans who, although biologically compatible, become increasingly unable to understand each other or coexist within the same social structures. This could lead to new forms of social segregation based not on physical or cultural characteristics, but on consciousness structures and cognitive capacities. Another possible scenario is that technological tools, such as brain-machine interfaces and advanced cognitive therapies, allow more people to rapidly access states of consciousness and capacities that currently take decades of intensive development to achieve. This could democratize this accelerated evolution, reducing emerging cognitive inequalities. A third scenario is that those at the forefront of this evolution develop new languages, metaphors, and pedagogical structures that allow them to communicate their understandings in ways accessible to those at different stages of development. This could create bridges between different consciousness structures, enabling a kind of cognitive cross-pollination that benefits everyone involved. Regardless of which scenario prevails, one thing is certain. We all need to develop greater awareness of our own cognitive evolution and greater compassion for those navigating this territory at different paces. We need to recognize that just as we do not blame a child for not understanding advanced abstract concepts, we should not judge those who have not yet developed the structures of consciousness that allow them to grasp more complex aspects of contemporary reality. For those at the forefront of this accelerated evolution, the challenge is twofold: to continue their own development while maintaining meaningful connections with those at different evolutionary stages. This requires a sophisticated capacity for conceptual translation, a willingness to meet people where they are, and a deep humility about the limits of one's own knowledge and understanding. For those who feel disoriented or left behind by these rapid changes, the challenge is to keep an open mind and receptive heart, recognizing that confusion and disorientation are often precursors to significant evolutionary leaps. It is natural to feel resistance when confronted with ideas and experiences that fundamentally challenge our understanding of the world and ourselves. A useful metaphor for understanding this process is metamorphosis. When a caterpillar begins its transformation into a butterfly, the cells called imaginal discs are already present in its body, containing the blueprint for wings, antennae, and other organs of the future butterfly. Initially, the caterpillar's immune system attacks these imaginal discs, recognizing them as threats to the existing organism. Similarly, when new structures of consciousness begin to emerge within us or in our society, there is often initial resistance, a drive to protect familiar ways of being and knowing. But if the transformation proceeds successfully, there is eventually a turning point where the caterpillar's immune system yields, allowing the imaginal discs to multiply and begin forming the new organs of the butterfly. During this process, the caterpillar literally dissolves into a soup of cells, completely losing its former shape. From the outside, the chrysalis appears inactive, but inside it, a radical reorganization is taking place. This phase of dissolution and reorganization can be frightening for both individuals and societies. There is a real loss of familiar structures, identities, and certainties. But it is precisely through this process of dissolution that new possibilities emerge. The question is not whether we should avoid this dissolution, but how we can navigate it with wisdom, compassion, and shared purpose. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the present moment is that, unlike the caterpillar's metamorphosis, which follows a genetically predetermined blueprint, our cognitive and cultural evolution is largely undetermined. There is no predefined plan for what we will become. We are individually and collectively actively participating in the creation of the next iterations of the human being. This indeterminacy brings both enormous responsibility and extraordinary freedom. So, to return to our initial question, why are some women evolving faster than the rest of society? The answer is multifaceted involving historical, biological, cultural, and technological factors. But perhaps the most useful perspective is to see this phenomenon not as an anomaly to be explained, but as a precursor to broader future possibilities. What we observe today in specific groups may eventually become available to a much larger portion of humanity. And although the focus of this essay has been on women, it is important to recognize that this accelerated evolution is also observed in other groups that have been historically marginalized in various ways, such as LGBTQ+ people, neurodivergent individuals, and those who have lived between different cultures. The experience of navigating systems not designed to accommodate their existence seems to catalyze the development of extraordinary adaptive capacities that are now proving crucial for the human future. If there is a central lesson to be drawn from this analysis, it is that our understanding of human evolution needs to expand to include not only genetic changes over millennia, but also transformations in our consciousness, cognition, and culture that can occur within a single generation or even a single lifetime. We are only beginning to develop the languages and conceptual frameworks needed to map and understand these rapid transformations. As we move forward into this uncharted territory, we will need new kinds of science, philosophy, art, and spirituality capable of keeping pace with the emerging complexities of what it means to be human in the 21st century. And we will need new forms of social organization and governance that can accommodate the growing diversity, not only in terms of culture or belief, but also in terms of fundamental structures of cognition and consciousness. If these reflections resonate with your own experiences and observations about the world we are building and the challenges we face as individuals, I invite you to join us on this journey of discovery. By subscribing to the channel, you will become part of a community of people who, like you, are seeking to understand more deeply our human condition in times of rapid transformation. Each week, we share new perspectives that can illuminate the dark paths we all face in the information age and offer conceptual tools to navigate this new world with greater wisdom and less suffering. We are not alone in this search for meaning and clarity. Subscribe so that we can continue together this essential dialogue about what it means to be human today and what we may become tomorrow. Ultimately, the question is not whether some people are evolving faster than others, but how all of us can consciously participate in the evolutionary process that is reshaping what it means to be human. Each of us, regardless of gender, culture, or circumstance, has the capacity to expand our consciousness, develop new abilities, and contribute to the emergence of wiser, more compassionate, and more integrated forms of humanity. The future of human evolution is not written in the stars or in our genes. It is being written now through the choices we make, the questions we explore, and the connections we cultivate with one another and with the broader world of which we are a part. What makes us human has always been in flux, but the speed and scale of current transformations are unprecedented. We are simultaneously creating and being created by evolutionary forces we have barely begun to understand. In this context, epistemic humility, ethical discernment, and the courage to venture into the unknown become not merely abstract philosophical virtues, but practical necessities for navigating the emerging world. And as we contemplate the mystery of our own transformation, perhaps the most important question is not who is evolving faster, but what kind of human beings we wish to become individually and collectively. This is not a question that can be answered definitively, but one that we must continue to explore as we move forward together on this extraordinary journey of discovery and creation.
One of the things I liked about Buddhism is that belief to some extent is of course important. If you don't believe that going to a meditation retreat will help you in some way, you won't go there. But the belief in itself doesn't do anything for you. It's your ability to actually observe the reality without reaction, without judgment, to just see things as they are. This is what liberates.
What do you have to say to democratic countries where we also see a bombarding of information like this impacting the democracy?
Democracy, in essence, is a conversation between a large number of people which has strong self-correcting mechanisms. You need to keep the conversation, and to have a conversation, you must have many voices. If there is only one voice which is allowed to be heard, this is not a conversation. This is a dictatorship. This is a monologue, a dictate. The other thing is, a country must have a self-correcting mechanism, especially for the government, that if the government make a mistake, there is an independent media, there are independent courts that can expose and correct the mistake of the government, and ultimately, there are free and fair elections in which the people can replace the government. As long as you have these mechanisms, democracies are safe. You can have different governments with this policy or that policy and experiment. As long as there are these checks and balances and the ultimate ability to replace the government, then the democracy is safe. The danger in every democracy, and this goes back thousands of years, in a democracy you give one person or one party the power for a limited duration, on condition they afterwards give it back to the people, and the people can make a different choice next time. The danger is, what if you give power to someone who then doesn't give it back? They use the power they have to take over the institutions, to rig the elections, to control the media, and then you can never replace them. That was always the big dangers in democracy. You can have strong institutions, but government ultimately is able to corrupt all these institutions. So people should make wise choices and be very careful not to give power to people who might not want to give it back.
You really not use a smartphone?
For many years, I just didn't have a phone. Then it became too difficult because, again, many services just demanded, like the bank or the doctor, that I have a phone. So I keep it, but I try to use it instead of being used by it. It's not on me all the time. I'm not addicted to it. I'm not checking it all the time. I try to use it as a tool.